Hey everyone, Jessica Whitaker here, and in today's video, I'm going to be sharing 10 things that I want you to know before you make the move to New York City. Now, I'm going to be specifically talking about the borough of Manhattan. I've lived in New York City twice. I lived in Chelsea the first time in 2014 to 2015 for design school. Then I moved back into Manhattan in 2017 to 2019 on the Upper West Side. I'm no longer living in New York, but chances are I'll make the trek back there in the next few years. So I want to do a disclaimer that when I'm sharing these tips, I do not mean to come off as if I'm complaining or even entitled. Something that really gets on my nerves is when I see people sharing about a city, whether it's New York, Los Angeles, London, and just complaining about things that are pretty standard and what we just deal with and compromise when we live in a city. I just want to kind of bring a bit of reality and share some insight that you might not otherwise have heard of before. So, number one, grocery shopping. Grocery shopping is a lot of work. Most people in Manhattan do not have cars. There's not really any need to have a car if you are just going to be within the city. So when you're grocery shopping, you do have to be very intentional and mindful about how you're going to get all your groceries back to your apartment, especially if your apartment is like a 6th floor walk up. So a walk up means that the apartment doesn't have an elevator in the building, so you're walking up maybe 6 or 7 flights of stairs. In my building, we actually did have an elevator, and if you're interested in seeing my building in my old apartment, I'll have that video up on an iCard here. I'll also link it down below. Getting a cart is going to save you a lot of hassle. There's a few different types of carts that you can get. There's small ones, there's larger ones. You're gonna wanna go with the larger one. The small is just not gonna be able to carry most of your groceries because since grocery shopping is so much just work in the city and effort, you're not gonna be really going to Trader Joe's a couple times a week and just buying groceries as you go. You're gonna probably be grocery shopping about once every other week because Trader Joe's is really busy. Lines are super long, they move really fast. Sometimes at Trader Joe's at like 3 p.m. on a Tuesday, the line will be wrapped around all the way, like the whole store. It gets pretty intense. 1 year into my lease, they put a Trader Joe's in on like 93rd or 91st Street, I think 93rd. And that meant that I could walk to Trader Joe's with my cart instead of taking the subway from 96th down to 72nd. Because even with a cart, you're still going to have to take that on the subway up and down the stairs. Some stations will have elevators, and actually 96th Street and 72nd both had elevators, so I didn't have to worry about bringing the cart up all of the stairs, but it's just something to keep in mind. A really long-winded warning for you. Piggybacking off of number one, number two is running an errand or errands is kind of an inconvenience and a lot of just physical schlepping. For example, let's say you have to go to FedEx, you have to go to your P.O. box or the post office, just USPS. You need to do a doctor's appointment, and you also have to pick up dog food. 4 errands are going to take you the entire afternoon because chances are FedEx is down on 72nd Street, your post office is up on 104th Street, doctor's appointment is across the park on the Upper East Side, your dog food store is downtown. That's all over the map.
I feel like I didn't do the best job explaining my point. Errands are just a lot because you're on foot and you're also carrying everything on your back. It's a lot of schlepping. Even though errands can still take a long time when you live in the suburbs, it's more the physical exertion, I think is the word, that gets you.
So that's just something to keep in mind. Number 3 is to create a Google Drive folder between you and your roommates, if you have roommates, of anything that your landlord texts you, emails you, writes a note, take a photo of the note.
This is just in case something goes awry. You never know. My landlord turned out to be crazy. There was never any reasoning with him about anything. Even when we had mice pooping all over the apartment, including the kitchen, for 3 months. You don't know these people. You don't know your super. You don't know your landlord. You might think that you do, but this is all a preventative measure. So God forbid you have to take some kind of action, you have everything organized. We weren't going to take action because I was out of there in 2 months anyway, and nobody should have to live like that even for 2 more months of a mice infestation, but it's just something to keep in mind, okay, for organization.
For me, our landlord told us that if we wanted to renew our 2-year lease, that he wouldn't raise the rent on us, and this was in a text message. And then once the lease was ending, he wrote us in an email and said he would only raise the rent about $120. And, you know, things just didn't add up because he said one thing and then in an email he's saying another. It sucks that I even have to make this a tip or a point, but you just really, you never know. Be organized. Like, let's get the receipts together. Number 4, if you're not willing to be assertive or you feel like you can't, you need to develop that. It just means that if you're running late for work and you see the subway that's rolling up is packed with people, but you know that at least 2 more bodies could squeeze in there, you have to squeeze your body on the train. Now, does this mean you're gonna like elbow people through on the subway? No, but it does mean that you hop on and you just wiggle yourself in. You hop on, and if they're not moving, you ask people, excuse me, please move back. And you're gonna have to use an assertive voice. But it doesn't mean that you're gonna be nasty to people. So, number 5, you are going to have to compromise when it comes to your living space. Compromises like the location. Let's say where you would love to live is out of your budget. You're going to have to sacrifice that location if you want to have a decent apartment. But maybe you're okay with living in a shoebox and you're willing to live in a really small space because you love the neighborhood. Maybe you're going to sacrifice that there's no sink in the kitchen, yeah, or that there's no sink in the bathroom, which is a real thing. Maybe your dream apartment is a 7-floor walk-up, which means you have about 8 flights of stairs to walk up every single day. These compromises quite literally come with the territory of living in New York City, of living in Manhattan. Number 6, that you can always leave if you don't want to be there anymore. And I know that there's so many different scenarios when people really can't leave Manhattan. They don't have a plan B, they don't have a backup. And I don't want to sound ignorant by just saying, if you don't like it, you can leave, because there is so much money that goes into making a cross-country move, for me at least, or even just moving from the next state over. It's a lot of money and it's a lot of time, it's a lot of effort and energy. And I have a video that I talk about how I moved in and out of the city twice, and I'll have that down below, so check that out. So I don't want to start this with just leave if you don't like it, because that's not the reality for a lot of people. But I do want to remind you that New York City is worth it until it's not. It's okay to hit pause, seriously. And just because you decide to move out of New York City doesn't mean that you can't move back. Number 7 is commuting time. I'm gonna try to get through the next few points kind of fast because I know that we've talked for so long already. I hope that you don't mind the chit chat, but the commuting time in New York, just Manhattan alone, it's kind of a lot. For me, it took me at least 45 minutes to get down every day to my workspace. So I worked out of Soho on Mercer Street, and I lived off of 96th Street station. So for me, I was taking about 2 trains, same line. So it took like the 2-3 down, and then I transferred at 14th and took the 1 local down to Canal Street. Canal Street was my stop, but it still took me 45 minutes like every single day, 45 times 2. Anywhere in the city, even though the public transit system is great in theory, there's still a ton of delays. There's still a lot of times that trains aren't in service and operating, and even like later at night, past like 10:30 p.m., it can take you about an hour and a half just to get back uptown. Therefore, you always want to give yourself at least 20 minutes of wiggle room. It will be different if you're living pretty close to where you work, but for me, like I said, it's always 45 minutes. Therefore, you could live in Queens and Brooklyn, and it's not going to be any more of a trek into Manhattan than it is from Upper West Side to Soho within Manhattan itself. But it's just that you're most likely going to have roommates if you live in the city. This could be 1 roommate, this could be 6 roommates. If you can live with roommates for the first like 2 or 3 apartments that you have, that is going to save you a significant amount of money. It's going to be really hard for you to find an apartment for less than like $1,500 in Manhattan. There are some areas that you don't have to pay $1,500, but $1,500 a month versus paying like $600 a month is significant especially in New York. It's gonna give you, chances are, a lot more freedom and flexibility when you can save as much money on your apartment and on the rent as possible. We're gonna end on your identity doesn't lie within the city you live in. So many of us can have so much pride in our lives, not pride like I'm proud to live in New York, but pride in the sense of I'm going to break my back over just trying to prove to other people back in the suburbs, back home, in my high school, in college, whatever it might be, that I can make it in New York. And if I move back home, that means that I'm a failure. Or if I move to Connecticut or New Jersey, that means that I'm a failure. I couldn't make it in New York. So I'm gonna be prideful and I'm going to overextend myself in every way. And I don't even like to really live here, but I'm just gonna keep doing it. So if you wanna live in New York, go for it. But if you ever find that you want to move out, the one thing that might be holding you back is pride and fear of failure and fear of thinking that once you leave, you can never come back. So I hope that made sense. I hope that this video helped you out. I know it's a bit of a longer one, but I want to be as helpful and informative as possible. All right, those are my 10 things to know before you move into the city. I would like to know if you have any suggestions for anyone who's looking to move to Manhattan or anywhere else. Leave them in the comments below. Typically here on YouTube, I teach photography, both digital and film, to beginners. So if you're interested in that at all, be sure to hit subscribe so you're the first to know when a new tutorial for your business comes out. You can also find me over on Instagram where I share daily tips, tools, and resources for you and your photography business. And I will see you in my next video. Bye.